Hello, friends, and welcome to a very special edition of Coming In for a Landing. I am your host, Paul Hudrick. We are on the eve of the Sixers season kicking off. Obviously, NBA season starts Tuesday, but the Sixers tip off against the Washington Wizards Wednesday night. I will be there at the Wells Fargo Center. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'm very much looking forward to discussing that game and the season going forward with my guy, Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic. Devon, thank you so much for coming on again, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me again. And I should see you at the game as well tomorrow.
Nice. Looking
Yeah,
forward to it, man. I feel like
absolutely.
so many people granted, we're all going to have to be 6 feet apart from each other and all that, but still going to be cool to see some faces. And it's going to be cool just to be in the gym again and feel the vibe of a basketball game, an NBA basketball game. And so, yeah, very excited about that. But I want to get right into it, man. I mean, we got a lot to cover. I want to make this, again, a big picture, looking at the whole season, looking at the Sixers as a whole. Want to touch on Ben and Joel. Want to touch on Tobias Harris, how we see the rotation playing out. Of course, what would an episode of this podcast be without more James Harden rumors? So I definitely want to touch on that as well. And then we're going to wrap it up with some predictions for you. But I'm going to get started with, Tuesday, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons both talked. Both addressed different kinds of rumors. Ben Simmons, we'll start with him. It's first time he has talked since the Woj report came out that the Sixers would be willing to part with him for James Harden in certain packages. Yes. Daryl Morey has come out, denied those. Doc Rivers, again, reiterated he's very happy with the team. Ben Simmons, this is the first chance we got to speak with him about it. He said that the right answer, he said, listen, I can't control it. It is what it is. The rumors are out there. As long as I'm wearing a Sixers uniform, I represent the Sixers, and I'm going to try to win basketball games for this team. I thought the question was, I want to give a shout out to Mark Narducci from the Inquirer, because I thought he posed the question very well. And I want to give Ben Simmons credit for answering it fully and respectfully. Just, I guess, Devon, your reaction to, that initial rumor, and then also Ben's response of saying, like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah, first, you're right. It was a great question about Mark posing that question. It needed to be asked. And he threw it out there. And Ben, as you've seen, he's grown over the years where he just doesn't give you those short answers. Sometimes he'll give you those well thought out, detailed responses to certain things. So that was great to hear that from Ben. And as far as the rumor goes, when it came out last week, Paul, I initially thought, here we go again. Wow. And then, okay, what side is this coming from? Isn't that what we're supposed to think of first? What side is this coming from? And the only place it's going to benefit is from the Houston side, specifically James Harden and his representation. So that's where I was with it. I'm still in that camp of, I understand that you would have to move Ben Simmons to get James Harden. That's the only way for it to get done, quite honestly, unless the market dries up so much that, with all due respect, Tobias Harris can be the feature with another young player and a draft pick as well to make it happen. But as you said, these are not going to go away until something happens. The report comes out earlier as well that now James Harden is in practice. And when he's in practice at this point now, Paul, what's happening? He's throwing basketballs at rookies. Yeah, so he's really trying to get himself out of there. And so it's just wild. And look, the Sixers have the best package when it starts with Ben Simmons. If Denver is not willing to part with Michael Porter Jr. or any of these other young players that are out there, Jamal Murray as another guy from Denver, if they're not going to part with those guys, and Miami is not going to part with Bam Adebayo or Tyler Hero, and I don't know if Tyler Hero is a starting point. He might be a point, but Bam Adebayo is the starting point. Then these things are going to continue to come out, and these things are going to continue to happen. And the agents and representation from James Harden's side are going to continue to push it. Now, from the Sixers side, yes, you have to do your due diligence, answer the phone, and ask the questions, whatever you need to ask when they call. But you don't have to call, because you are right now, you are the ones with the power. If you did want to negotiate with the Houston Rockets and their new general manager Stone and figure out what could possibly happen. And ideally, it would be best if you didn't have to get rid of either Embiid or Simmons. Sure. But we know that you would probably have to get rid of one of the two. And right now, Simmons is the one. So I'm still in a place where, again, I understand it. I prefer not to have to give up Simmons, because we've always talked about this. Let's see what happens when he gets some new leadership a new voice, a new coach, and you have that. Not just a coach, but a new coaching staff that is going to help him out in the long run. So that's where I am. I still remain there. And again, I continue to understand that in order to get something, you would have to give up something. And that would, of course, be Ben Simmons.
Yeah, and you touched on with Ben Simmons because I know like fans aren't going to appreciate it nearly as much as you or I, who who are in these availabilities and who hear his quotes and all that. There have been plenty of times where Ben Simmons has been very short with us. Sometimes I've understood it, honestly. Like I get these guys are human, and and not only that, he's a young guy. Like I get it. You don't always want to deal with some of this stuff.
You get tired of the same question.
Exactly. Right. And especially when it's stuff like this, like a rumor, like what kind of almost like, what is he supposed to say? Right.
Sure.
And he said what he's supposed to say to me. I mean, that's the right answer is I can't control it. I'm here. I'm happy. I want to help this team win, but I want to just give him credit because in general, this leading up to this season through training camp, he's been much more forthright, a lot more thoughtful with his answers. So I just want to give him a little credit from that standpoint. And yeah, I mean, to your point, the Sixers should be in no hurry, and I don't think they are. I think Daryl Morey is going to take his time. I think, like you already said, he wants to see what Ben Simmons will do when he has a new coach, when he has new talent around him, when he has shooters around him with Joel Embiid, and we get a kind of better picture of what that looks like when the skill set and the fit is better around them. So I think that's where Daryl Morey is. I don't think it's a bluff. I think he genuinely is saying, right, I want to see what this looks like. I'm not in a hurry. And if you're the Rockets, as of right now, you probably shouldn't be in a hurry either. But if he's going to keep throwing basketballs at people in practice, maybe maybe that accelerates it. Maybe it gets into like a Jimmy Butler situation where it just kind of gets to be a little, almost untenable.
And that happened pretty quickly too.
It did.
The Minnesota one that would happen in November when Elton Brand and Minnesota got together and made that happen.
Right. And remember it's eerily similar in the fact that Jimmy really wanted to go to the Heat. Like the Heat, that was his spot. That's where he wanted to go. And he's like, maybe I'll go to Philadelphia. And then that kind of opened things up. And then, so it's kind of similar here where, James Harden really wanted to go to Brooklyn. Right. He's like, you know what? I wouldn't mind going to the Sixers either. And then maybe that loosens things up. But yeah, we'll see. I'm with you that I don't see any deal where you don't include Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons has to be the centerpiece. And if that's the case, that is a more attractive trade package than I think anyone else can offer in the league. So that's another reason why, to what you already pointed out, the Sixers have some leverage here because they're not getting a better package than that. So, they're not going to go away. The rumors are going to keep coming. And speaking of rumors with Joel Embiid, there was a story in The Athletic that came out today that said that he did not want Tyronn Lue as the head coach of the Sixers because he was quote unquote Ben Simmons' guy. Say, the idea that LeBron James and Ben Simmons are close because of the clutch connection. LeBron is close with Ty Lue because they won a championship together, yada, yada, yada. And somehow that got linked to Joel Embiid not wanting Ty Lue to be the guy because it was Ben Simmons' guy.
Sure.
And Joel Embiid came out today. It kind of had a similar answer to Ben Simmons saying, I can't control that. That's coming out, where that's coming from, I don't know. And he went out of his way to kind of compliment Tyronn Lue and Mike D'Antoni saying, hey, I thought they were both great candidates. I think either guy would have been great here, but I'm glad we got Doc Rivers. So, I mean, to me, and maybe I'm overselling it, but I see it as a sign of maturity for both him and Ben and Joel to respectfully listen to the questions. And again, give very thoughtful and very, respectful answers. I was just curious your take on that as well.
No, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to go with the maturity as well, that maybe this is something that we're starting to see with Ben Simmons, year number, 5 now at this point for him, or year number 4 on the floor, 5 overall, and Embiid going into his 6th or 7th year as well, where that maturity does start to set in. Joel Embiid becoming a first-time parent and understanding that things are a little bit different. So you even approach maybe your work a little bit different as well. Now, the only thing with he can't control what comes out. But if that was his true belief, he can't control that someone knew that was the case. It was eventually leaked and it got out there. Now, his response to your point, that's the right way to go about it. You're not going to, number one, crush your teammate and say, well, I don't want his guy. Of course, you're not going to do that. And then secondly, you're not going to crush these other coaches because you never know where you may have to cross paths with them. So don't burn any bridges. So it was the right response in that one. And I'm not surprised. We always hear these things coming from different cities with all these different rumors and all these different things that come out about these players. So, all right, it's the 76ers' turn, especially when you have such a big coaching search, two players that have been linked together for so many years where the assessment is they cannot play together and they don't like each other and they don't get along. So sure, these types of things are going to come out. It's how they handle it, how they squash it, how they burn, put the fire out when it comes to these things. And to your point, maybe the maturity is setting in for the both of them where that is not the case for them, where they can get along, they can play together. Who I am one of those people, by the way, who believe that they can play together. We've seen them have 50-win seasons already. They need to be better, but they can play together. So yeah, this is a sign of maturity from the both of them. And I hope it now carries over to the floor as well. And with this new coaching staff, with the new front office, being up front, telling them exactly how you feel, I hope that's exactly what they're getting from up top.
Yeah, it's a great point. And then, we're not saying anything explosive or secretive when we say, hey, this team has been surrounded by drama in the past. They've had plenty of it, whether it was just last year with Josh Richardson with accountability comments, with, the Jimmy Butler drama with, where him and Ben Simmons not getting along. And at first it was with him and Joel Embiid not getting along. Right. And Brett Brown. And just so this team has never lacked for drama. But how do you get rid of drama? Well, when you get asked about stuff like this, you have those type of responses. And I think you raise another excellent point where you talk about if there are issues, let's squash it. Let's get out in front of it and let's not dance around it. Let's just face it head on and take it. And I think that is what stood out to me in their responses. And I think that is what's going to help both of them, at least from a handling the media standpoint. I could see that helping them a lot. How that will translate to the court, we'll see, and that maturity, and we'll see how that looks. And I'm curious how you see, the offense is going to look totally different under Doc Rivers. We saw a glimpse of it in the first preseason game. They still got a lot of work to do. They were all very clear about that today. Just what are your kind of expectations for the season? Do you think that they start? And I agree with you when you say that long term, I do think they can play together, and it's proven that they can work if you surround them with the proper pieces. How do you kind of see it playing out with them offensively in the half court? Like, how do you envision that looking? Do you see Simmons shooting more, scoring more? Do you see Embiid deferring more? Or do you think that maybe just get similar to what we've seen in the past, but maybe just at an elevated level?
I see a lot of motion with this offense, a lot of movement. Not a lot of people standing still, if you will. Maybe you'll have that Matisse Thybulle who will be in the corner because he's not necessarily known as a shooter. And if he does shoot it and does it at a good clip, we know the short corner three is the one that normally you'll see a guy like Matisse Thybulle standing in the corner for a shot like that. But cutting every once in a while, going along the baseline. I see some patience from Embiid. I hope to see some patience from Embiid where he is able to identify those double teams that come quicker, get the ball out, not feel like it always has to be on him. If he has an opportunity to put somebody in the basket, go for it. And they should find him when he has an opportunity to put someone in the basket. But yeah, deferring a little bit more because the coaches, again, will see something different. Yes, if he's going, as a smart coach will, feed him the rock, continue to feed him the rock. And again, once that double team starts to come, then you have to find something else that will work differently. As far as Ben Simmons in the half-court set, Paul, I go into every season not expecting him to shoot at this point because we haven't seen anything any different. Yeah, so I don't allow myself to get too frustrated any longer, except for in the moment when it's so identifiable that he needed to take that shot. Now I'm telling him off in my head, right? Screaming out loud, shoot the ball. What are you doing? You just made a selfish play because it made things go a different way. So I do see him being a little more aggressive. My favorite thing is aggressive Ben Simmons is the best Ben Simmons. And while he's been able to get you 17, 9, and 8 every given night, an all NBA player, all-star, all defensive representative as well for that team, those things are great. And he's been able to do those without doing what we're asking him to do more. So I would love the shooting. My thing is, again, aggressive to the basket, don't shy away from the contact. That confidence will come if those free throws are now falling. That'll jump up your percentage points, your points per game a little bit higher. Your free throw percentage goes higher. Now in your head, offensively in the half court, you're not worried about those other things. And maybe that will open things up for him on that end of the floor and make it a lot easier. Then, as we know, both of them are facilitators. Ben will find those open shooters, Curry, Green, Milton, Korkmaz, whoever it might be, Harris as well. And then those one-on-one situations, opportunities for Tobias Harris to go to work when that attention is being placed elsewhere, that'll allow him to work. So I see a lot of movement, a lot of Embiid on the low block still. Ben Simmons taking advantage of those things, cutting to the basket, receiving it, taking that contact, finishing at the rim, getting to the free throw line, shooters knocking them down, Tobias Harris going one-on-one in the half-court set. I see a lot of those things. Will it come together? I don't know, but that's what I think will happen. And as you pointed out, some of the things we saw in the 2 games against Boston and Indiana in the preseason.
See, my biggest fear, and it's because I agree with you, that Ben Simmons to me is better when he is looking to score and then passing off of it. You know what I mean? Getting downhill, looking to get to the rim, and then if he doesn't have it, passing out of it because he's so good at finding people. But I think he's got to almost have like a score-first mentality and then play off of that. My fear is that, and I talked about it last time with Danny Palmel's, I had him on last week, and we talked about the idea that it seems like when Joel isn't in the game, that's when Ben Simmons is at his most aggressive. Now, I get to an extent he feels that responsibility because Joel is in the game that he has to play that way.
Point guard, get the ball to you. Yeah, right. Get the ball to your big man. Right.
Right. And I get that, and I respect it because Joel Embiid is who he is. I mean, he's a dominant post scorer.
He's a dominant force.
So yeah. I get it, but I guess my fear is, or not my. I guess fear is maybe a strong word, but what I'd like to see more of is when Joel is in the game, him still doing that and still attacking. Sure. And I think I actually asked Joel about it today because in the Boston game, you saw 2 different plays where Ben drove. And instead of just spotting up and shooting, Joel cut to the basket twice against Boston. Got fouled once, got an easy bucket on the other. And yes. I asked, like, is that Doc Rivers? Is that his influence? Or is that just you guys, now you're, the 3rd year together and now you're starting to feel. And he said, no, I think it's not really about the offense or the system. It's just a natural progression where him and I are starting to sense more things and starting to feel more comfortable with each other. And I kind of know when he's kind of maybe in trouble and when there is an opportunity to cut. And he said, like, it does make sense because when he cuts, because they're so used to him spotting up, it catches a lot of teams off guard. And it's just, I think the fact that they're starting to feel more chemistry as these years go on is only going to help. And because of Ben Simmons' unwillingness to shoot, these are the little things that Joel Embiid is going to have to do to help Ben Simmons, because I think the one point you make is sometimes Ben Simmons will get himself in that position where he'll get to the kind of that foul line area and then jump in the air and turn around and look to pass it. And it just most of the time it leads to a turnover. Most of the, especially
he did it against Indiana.
Teams. He did
in the preseason game. He did it. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, man, you're still doing this. Why are you doing this? Even to, as we talk about the young guy, Tyrese Maxey, where he has that floater, that teardrop, that runner. And I believe that could be with Ben Simmons' soft touch and these ambidextrous, he could shoot with either hand. I think that would benefit him. But for some reason, he has the weird one where it's kind of like a sidewinder and the ball's being flipped as he's running. And that's not great because your body is going so fast towards the basket. Where's your angle in order to make that shot? But you saw it there. I hope it's better. I don't like Embiid saying that that's just a natural progression. You've been on the floor with one another for 4 years. I would think that whether it be in practice or all of the games you played in the regular season and the postseason, that you would know what each other likes. And if Simmons is not a shooter, that I would know that as a guy who's a point guard in that way, he's looking to get the ball to someone. He's looking to play make. And I let me help him out by cutting, even if I am a 7'2", gigantic big man, but I have some athleticism. I have some ability to stop on the dime, if you will, and create some opportunity for him to give another pass, a passing lane for an easy bucket. So that's a little troubling for me. But if it does click this season, then so be it.
And I think maybe he's not giving Doc Rivers credit to the extent of like he's got more freedom to do that because when Brett Brown was here, Brett Brown was very big on wanting people like a post player or a driver to know where their outlets were. So that's why he didn't like a ton of movement around those two, because he wanted the guys to know where their outlets were. Whereas Doc Rivers just wants movement. He wants movement, and he wants
read the floor.
Exactly. And so I think that's, as much as, yeah, maybe it's a natural progression of him and Ben Simmons together and knowing each other. I don't think maybe he's quite given Doc Rivers enough credit, just for the fact that Doc Rivers is encouraging that movement. And that's part of the reason why I think it kind of just flowed instinctively with him, because he had the freedom to do it. He didn't have to stand outside of the 3-point line and spot up. But you mentioned Tobias Harris, and Doc Rivers talked again about him on Monday, and Tobias also talked. And it's funny, man, because Tobias, and listen, I can't blame the guy, but he's getting to a point where it's like, all right, I get it, you guys. You're all going to ask me about why am I not playing at the level I played at when I was with the Clippers? Like, why is that change? And like, he was asked it like 4 different ways, like yesterday, and he's been asked it for a while now. And, you know, you have Doc Rivers saying that he wants to get him back there, and not necessarily the production. Like, he might not be a 20-point scorer here, but if you can get to that efficiency mark where he was like, you know, on pace for a 50-40-90 season when he was with the Clippers, that's what they want. They want that efficiency and that quick decision making.
And a better clip from behind the 3-point line. He shot 43% while he was with Los Angeles. And that's something that, again, would translate very well to this offense. When you have such a big guy like Embiid and the passer that Simmons is, you knock that shot down at 43%. They already pay attention, but they really have to pay attention if you're making your shots that way.
Yeah, and those looks are going to be there because you have those two guys. And then not only because of those two guys.
And the other shooters.
I was going to say, they're not going to cheat off of Steph Curry or Danny Green. Like, if anything, they're going to cheat off you probably, because you haven't shown – because I think what's bothered me most about Tobias, and I think Doc Rivers has nailed it, is that just that hesitancy. Like, sometimes he'll get that wide open three, or maybe it's not wide open, right? Like, maybe there's a defender close by, but it's a three he could get off. And instead of taking it, he'll take a dribble, or he'll pump fake, or he won't just take the shot. And I think that's what Doc Rivers is getting at. And I think that's the thing that kind of drives me nuts about him, because when I saw him play in the Clippers, there was no hesitation. With the Clippers, there was no hesitation. He was taking those shots, or he was putting the ball on the floor and going. So I guess, can you envision Tobias Harris getting back to being that player? Not from a production standpoint, you know, not scoring 20+ points a game, being a borderline all-star, but just from a efficiency and from a quick decision-making standpoint. Do you think he can get back to that with this offense?
I hope so. I highlight again a preseason moment where they played the Boston Celtics in the right corner. He had that ball. It swung to him. He had a corner 3-pointer. And this is the NBA. These are some really, really, really good athletes. They're going to close out on you very quickly. You have to have your mind made up of what you're going to do, whether you're going to shoot it or drive. He hesitated. And even when he wanted to start driving, it allowed the defender to recover and still defend him and cut off an easy path to the basket for him. Had he taken the shot, I think it would have been a good shot from Tobias Harris, knowing that, again, he can't shoot those from the distance. Now, is he going to step things up? It's up to him. It's up to him. It's up to his confidence. Let's go back to December of last season when he was playing very, very well and was firmly in the conversation of being an all-star for the first time. That's how well he was playing. And it was warranted because he was that good. And then it dipped off again in January going into February. And those conversations were no longer being had. It was only about Embiid and Simmons, and rightfully so, because he could not continue on the path that he was on. You have to cool off. But again, there are ways to get it done. And when there are so many wings in the Eastern Conference, you're going to be dropped off, especially when you have names that are already locked in. You have to play above and beyond. And at some point, his production dipped. It carried over through the remainder of the season. We know about March 11th and things being halted. I remember a game against the Knicks, Paul. Both Simmons and Embiid were both out, and he dropped 30 on the Knicks at the center. They won. I wasn't working that night. My daughter and I were there. We were sitting and watching the game, but it still did not have the same feel as you pointed out. The production, all right, great. We know you're going to give us 19, but that 19 doesn't feel like a meaningful 19, even though he dropped 30. And sometimes it's hard to say, oh, well, that was empty, those empty calories or empty stats. That 30 and they won it still didn't feel like, oh, that 30 punched me in the chest. And I'm going to remember. I remember the 30 because it didn't do what I wanted it to do versus the 30 where, man, Tobias Harris really showed me exactly what you're talking about from his LA days, where it was really, really impactful with what he did. So I hope it works. Having him reunited with his head coach and even Sam Cassell from that coaching staff, the pick and roll that he was able to run with Marcin Gortat, that was very effective. Embiid is not Gortat as far as that role man. Is he a great screen setter? Sure, absolutely. He's a big man and he knows what to do and to keep his positioning. But as far as a screen setter and then rolling, sometimes Embiid wants to pop instead of rolling. So they have to get better at that. And I know that's a focus that maybe we'll talk about as well with the pick and roll. But he has to be able to be Tobias Harris, sure of what he's going to do, as you said, confidence in what he's going to do. And I think that will then help round him back into that player. I appreciate him saying, though, that I know I'm tired of hearing it, but I know I have not played at that level and I have to, because that's what they paid him for. That's what they made that trade. They let Jimmy Butler walk because of the Brown and Simmons angle of the whole Butler relationship. And they decided to keep Tobias Harris. All right, you did that. When you get $180 million, that comes with something. And if you are not going to produce, you are going to be criticized and you're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be looked at under a microscope because you are not producing at the level in which they brought you in here to be the number 2 scorer behind Joel Embiid while Ben Simmons figures his way out offensively with this team.
The word you used twice, and I think it's the proper word for Tobias Harris, is confidence. I think he's got a little bit of a crisis of confidence. I think it stems from maybe not knowing where he fits in, with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and when Brett Brown was here, and then kind of not quite figuring out that. I think you talked about the pick and roll as well. That's something that Brett Brown didn't run when he was here, that I thought Brett Brown should have explored more with Tobias Harris to kind of get him going and get him, and I think those things, I think maybe they didn't necessarily, and I defend Brett Brown a lot, but I would say one thing he may have failed on was not playing Tobias Harris to his strengths. And I think that hurt him. So that's what I'm hoping, that the combination of Doc Rivers being here just to encourage him, kind of seeing Doc Rivers' face, and maybe that does it. The pick and rolls, an action that he's been good at, that he had such great success with. I'm hoping that all of those things just kind of lead him to getting his confidence back, getting his swagger back. And I think that could ultimately make a difference. Because look, when look at Shake Milton right now, that guy is so ridiculously confident. The shots he's taking, the moves he's making, he feels, you could just see it in the way he plays. He is so confident right now. And he thinks every shot he takes is going in. And I think Tobias Harris had that swagger when he was with the Clippers, and we haven't seen it here yet. So that to me is the biggest thing. I think that confidence, that swagger, I think that's what he needs to get back to be the Tobias that we saw with the Clippers, and the one that could really complement, to your point, Joel Embiid from a scoring standpoint. I think that would be huge.
The one against Boston quickly in the playoffs in the bubble, just wasn't good. It just flat out was not good. He was part of the reason why they did not win. The lasting image, of course, is that terrible fall that he had and him gutting it out and coming back. So I give him credit for that. But to see him not play at the level that they needed while Embiid was putting up those crazy numbers, you needed that second player. And Tobias Harris was supposed to be that with Simmons out. And he couldn't do it. Yeah, no, agreed. 100%. And that was a big factor in why. And they couldn't score. I mean, they couldn't score in general. And that's what a guy like Tobias Harris is supposed to do. When you're not able to get a bucket, he needs to be a guy who can get you one. And he wasn't that guy in that Boston series. And that's a big part of it. But speaking of Shake Milton and things to be excited for, I don't think Doc Rivers has been like, he couldn't possibly more effusive in his praise for Shake Milton. And you see the hype kind of playing itself out through 2 preseason games. These look really good. But I'm just curious, what are you kind of just most excited for? Like when you watch the preseason games and what you've heard from camp, what is something on this team that's kind of got you excited? It seems like they have a new energy and a new life with this team. We've seen the Brett Brown-led team for 7 years. With all due respect, those first 4, that was a rebuild. But once the playoffs came about and the 50-win seasons came about, the expectations came with those. You saw some fun, you saw some life, but it didn't result into the wins that you wanted in the postseason. Now it has a different feel because You have this new coaching staff led by this guy who has been a champion at that level. Someone who feels even with some of the things that have come out of Los Angeles since, where it hasn't worked out with the star players. All right, maybe he needed a change as well, and he got that change, and maybe this is the right fit for him. So I'm excited about the fact that they may have found something where they can, reach each other. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid need each other. They might have needed Doc Rivers as well. So I'm excited about that. Just the new energy, the new life, the new infusion of youth with Tyrese Maxey. I'm curious to see what he is, by the way, a guest on Fanatic with me tonight, 8:10.
Ah, awesome.
So
looking forward to it.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. He's we talk about energy. That guy doesn't stop. And it's great to see someone, as we talk about a bucket getter, someone who can just break a defender down. And that's what he seems like he can do. Now, we haven't maybe seen it against the best, Patrick Beverley, Marcus Smart, just to name a few, that he's going to have to get a bucket from time to time when he comes in and do that. But then he's going to be playing against some second unit people as well. So he might be able to take advantage of them in whatever situation he's going to be in. So I look forward to that in the shooting as well. I'm curious to see what it does. Defensively, I think they should still be the same because, man, they are very good defensively with Embiid, led by Embiid and Simmons. And when Matisse Thybulle comes into the game, let's see how he impacts as well. So those are a few things just to highlight my excitement.
I'm glad you bring up Maxey because that is 100%. I'll be honest, I had like an affinity for young guys and draft picks, and like I love the NBA draft. I used to do the NFL draft stuff at NBC Sports, so like I love that stuff. It's just something I've always for some reason I just always have affinity for draft picks, and this guy just really excites the hell out of me because he should not have fallen to 21. First of all, that is a travesty. He's going to make a lot of teams, I think, regret that decision of passing up on him. He should have been a lottery pick because of what you already pointed to. How rare is it for a guy who can just make his own shot, can dribble the basketball, as well as he does, can get in that mid-range and make shots, can shoot off the dribble, has that floater game and the finishing package. That's a rare skill set for a lot of guys in the NBA, let alone a 20-year-old rookie coming in. Mm-hmm. And it's a skill set that this team has been starving for. They don't have that kind of guy. They haven't had that kind of guy in forever. For as good as Ben Simmons is, for as good as Joel Embiid is, for even as good as Shake Milton has looked, he's not that guy. He's not that guy who's going to use and like the way he uses a ball screen. Like I literally could not tell you the last Sixer I can remember that can use a ball screen as well as Tyrese Maxey does. And to see his explosiveness and the way he gets to the rim, the way he can finish at the rim, it's a rare skill for a guy his age to have. I think you make an excellent point though too. We talk about we haven't seen it against the big boys, against some of the upper echelon guys, and I'm very curious. Now listen, TJ McConnell, he's not at the level of those guys, but he's a guy who's going to hound you, and he's going to be in your jersey the whole game. And he looked pretty damn good. He blew by him a couple times, got to the rim and finished, and he wasn't, because I think too with McConnell, his thing is because he puts that pressure on guys, I think he can get in their heads a little bit, and we've seen him do it to veteran guys. So for a 20-year-old kid to stand up to that challenge, I think was really impressive. So I am definitely 100%. He is near the top of my list of things to be most excited about. I do agree with you that there is just a different vibe, different energy with this team. And I think the two superstar players on the team needed it. And I do think the coach, coming from where he came from, he needed it as well. He needed the fresh start, that clean slate. For sure. And we touch on Maxey. I'm curious, and you brought up Matisse Thybulle as well. I'm curious how you see the rotation playing out, because it seems pretty clear the starting five is the starting five. It's Joel, Ben, Tobias Harris, and Danny Green and Seth Curry. That seems pretty much set. The first four guys off the bench, it looks like Shake, Furkan Korkmaz, Mike Scott, and Dwight Howard. That looks like the first four. And then it looks like
great, by the way.
Yes, he has. He looked really good against Indiana. I'm really impressed with not only that, but what he's brought behind the scenes. I've been really impressed by. And then, that fifth spot's really up for grabs. Matisse Thybulle is going to get looks there. Tyrese Maxey's going to get looks there. I'm curious how you see that playing out. Do you think maybe he plays 11 guys at times just because he wants a different look with Maxey or Thybulle? Like, how do you kind of see that playing out?
Yeah, I do think he's going to mix it up a bit where you might go as deep as 11. Regular season, coming from what we've come from with the shorter training camps, shorter off season coming from the bubble, the acclimation that these guys are still trying to really get into with just being together. This is not a normal time. So I do think he will try to tinker every now and then with the different lineups and give different players an opportunity, like Thibault, who has had success, and even Maxey, where Maxey might just 4-minute burst. Go out there. I need this. This is what I need you for. Shake doesn't have it. Tyrese Maxey, I need you to go out there and do this. And let's see if you can get it done. And they're going to try to cut off his driving lanes, and they're going to maybe force him to shoot some jumpers because he hasn't proven that as of yet. They're going to challenge him on the defensive end to see if the hype is real about him also being an okay defender at such a young age, to see what he does there. So I don't know. And the last time you had me on the podcast, I thought that Matisse Thybulle would get a real shot to be a starter with that infusion in that first five with the defense to set that tone early on. Shooting, I understand. And I'm not mad at Doc Rivers for going with this lineup because I get it. We said it. We understood there was going to be that. But I wanted to see if Matisse Thybulle would make that next leap. And he was unable to. So let's see if he can make sure he keeps himself in that first 8, honestly. I mean, you mentioned it. Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz, Dwight Howard. Then you have Mike Scott and so on and so forth of what's happening. Matisse Thybulle, if I'm him, I would be ticked off that I'm not in that first 3 or even in that starting 5. So let's see how he responds to that now. New coach, different voice, wants defense. And if that's your calling card, you have to go out there and do that. But you also have to knock down your outside shots when they dare you to do so. So I would say early on, Paul, that he would give them an opportunity. Maybe he cuts it off quicker because there are 10 games less in this regular season. But I think he'll go 10, 11, mix it up a bit based on how the game is played out, maybe even the opponent or what guy coming off the bench is flat out scorching the Sixers on the other end. And they need that defender, and Matisse Thybulle is that.
Yeah, I tend to agree that that's kind of how it's going to play out. 10, 11 guys, depending on what's going on in the game, what the situation is, where maybe they might be struggling in one capacity. I do think that at some point, Maxey just forces his way in.
I love that.
Not going to happen early because I think it's going to be an adjustment. He's going to have to get, acclimate himself to the NBA and that level of competition and all that. But I think if he's coming for a spot, and I think he's going to get it by some time during the season. He's just going to be too good. His skill set's just going to be too much of what they need that I think he's going to force his way in. It's fair to point out with Thybulle, he did struggle in the Boston game. I thought looked better in the Pacers game. Was nursing a sprained ankle early in camp. Doc Rivers kind of pointed to that as maybe a reason why you didn't see him more in the preseason. So I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. And yeah, I am very interested to see the response from Thybulle because you and I think most people had him as, he is 100% a rotation guy. He's in that top 8, however you want to word it. He's in that. And now it doesn't appear to be the case that he's a lock for that. So I am interested to see how a young guy like that in his second NBA season, new coach, how he kind of responds and what he does in his first game. I want to wrap this up.
Yes.
I want to talk about predictions. Do you have any kind of bold prediction for the season? Or if not, what do you think you see this playing out? Where do they finish? And maybe the playoffs, I know we're just spouting here because we have no idea how it's going to look. And there's so many variables that can come up, but what's your kind of either bold prediction or just your prediction for the season in general?
I would say bold prediction is Ben Simmons did not get traded, and he is the defensive player of the year in the association. So that would be my bold prediction. I see them playing themselves into the top 5 right now. I cannot for some reason, I cannot get past 5 to get to 4 and be in that top 4, but I think they're good enough, but I want to see it a little more and then adjust my thinking thereafter, because our last impression, again, is Tobias Harris doing one thing. The shooters now, they haven't shot in the preseason, but it's okay. They're streaky. It happens. And once again, this is different coming in. So I still see them as a top 5 team in the East. They can be dangerous. And I see, again, them making a run to the second round. Now, what happens there, I don't know, because I do think Daryl Morey and Elton Brand will do something by the deadline in March. So that's my bold prediction.
Yeah, agreed. This is not going to be the roster that is the roster for the rest of the season. There's something, and it's not. Listen, it might not be a James Harden trade, but it could be a trade
Something
for
significant.
for a player that will help them. I
Yeah.
could totally 100% see that being a thing that happens because Daryl Morey is not the type to sit around, and they have a lot more flexibility now. They have a lot of different flexible kind of moving parts and contracts they can use. For me, my bold prediction and my just prediction for the team kind of go hand in hand. I think they get into the top 4. And I think that as a result of that, I think Doc Rivers is going to get some serious coach of the year
consideration there.
I really do.
Okay.
Because I think just what you already touched on with that new energy, that new vibe, I think that's going to help Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I think it's going to help Tobias Harris. And I think the roster around them is just going to naturally be a better fit, and that's going to help them. And I think all of that is going to lead to them being a better team. And I tend to agree with you. I think it's they get that 4 seed, they get the home court advantage, whatever that's worth at this point.
Right.
And I mean, I guess it is. They'll be in their own building and get to sleep in their own bed, so that's something. And I think that them being in the 4 seed, they get to the second round. Then things will get a little dicey because then you're going to be dealing with one of those big boys, whether it's the Bucks or the Heat or the Celtics or whomever. So I think that's going to present a bigger challenge. So yeah, I think we're kind of aligned. I mean, I see a 4 seed and I see a first round win, and I'm not so sure about the second round win.
There you go.
But Devon, I want to thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. I know you got a show to do tonight, so I want to let you go.
I appreciate it.
And thank you all for coming on, checking us out, coming in for a landing podcast. I am your host, Paul Hudrick. Please check us out on social media. We have a bunch of different social media pages, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of it. We're going to try to keep up with it and run it as best we can. Try to get you the latest news on the Sixers and the latest in our podcast and the latest video that we can provide for you guys. But thank you all so much for listening and tuning in, and we will talk to you after the first game of the Sixers season. All right, cool.
Great.
Stop this.